So continuing on with the endocrine system, now we move on to the adrenal glands. The adrenal glands sit on top of your kidneys. So we've talked about the hypothalamus and pituitary, the brain, thyroids, and now we're down to the kidneys, which are sort of in the more posterior section, like your lower back area. So they sit on the superiorly, basically on top of each kidney. So 2 kidneys, 2 adrenal glands, and they produce catecholamine, your epinephrine and steroid hormones. Okay, so the adrenals are divided into 2 distinct regions. Cortex, just like we talked about cerebral cortex, that's sort of like on the outside, and then medulla in the middle. Your cortex area of your adrenal gland is your typical endocrine gland, so therefore it's producing hormones that are be released into your bloodstream. And your medulla is more a neuroendocrine organ, which we're going to talk about, secretes neurohormones. Cortex of your adrenal gland is divided into 3 distinct regions or distinct zones. Zona glomerulosa, zona fasciculata, and zona reticularis. Just know that it's divided into these 3 distinct regions producing these mineral corticoid hormones, glucocorticoids, and androgenic steroid hormones as well. All right, but just know that it's divided into these 3 regions, which it talks about here, as you can see here in this diagram. And this is the adrenal cortex surrounding the inner adrenal medulla. Adrenal cortex, typical endocrine gland, adrenal medulla, neuroendocrine. Okay, and you notice that it's right on top of the kidneys. Aldosterone secreted. My words are slurring. Aldosterone secreted by your adrenal cortex is your main mineral corticoid, which regulates your concentration of sodium and potassium in your body. Very important. Sodium and potassium are what help our neurons and our muscle cells be able to depolarize by the influx of sodium, depolarize, and then repolarize by potassium, by pushing potassium out of the cell. So it allows those cells to be stimulated. Right, so that's why it says here in this first book, the functioning of muscle cells and neurons. All right, so you have to have the sodium and potassium balanced in your body so that these muscle cells and neurons can function properly. They can be stimulated. Right, so aldosterone helps maintain concentrations of extracellular sodium and potassium. Okay. Also regulates extracellular fluid volume. Extracellular means the fluid outside the cell, right? Because that fluid volume is going to affect your sodium and chloride ions, specifically really affect your sodium ions. And so the aldosterone will affect the kidneys, which can control how much water stays in your body or is excreted from your body. Right, helps maintain blood pressure. This is also in relation to the kidneys. If we add fluid to your blood pressure goes up. If we remove fluid from your blood pressure goes down. All of your blood is filtered through your kidneys. Therefore, through this renin, angiotensin, aldosterone system, we can control your blood pressure, which is important so that your the right amount of blood flows to your heart, your brain, and your kidneys. It also helps maintain, aldosterone helps maintain your acid-base homeostasis, activating your hydrogen ion pumps in your kidneys. If your blood pH, which is supposed to be at 7.3, 7.4, if it gets too low, if your pH gets too low, we can pump out the hydrogen ion and therefore raise your blood. If the pH gets too low, we can pump out hydrogen ion and therefore raise your blood pH to maintain it slightly alkaline, right? So we want your blood pH to be a little more basic than versus being acidic, a little bit above 7. So that can also be controlled at your kidneys, and aldosterone secreted by your adrenal cortex can help do that, right? So that's just showing you adrenal cortex, which sits right on top of the kidneys, can secrete the hormone aldosterone. Adrenal cortex, which is the outside portion of the adrenal gland, which sits on top of your kidneys, can secrete the hormone aldosterone, which can therefore affect things like your blood pressure, your sodium, your potassium, in the pH, in your body's pH, by directly affecting the kidneys, which it is connected to. All right, so this slide talks about the production of the steroid hormones. It's partially regulated by this multi-tiered negative feedback loop, which we are familiar with. This particular one is the hypothalamic, your hypothalamus, pituitary, adrenal cortical axes, all right? Hypothalamus, remember, can send hormones to the pituitary, which then sends hormones to control other parts of your body. All right, so hypothalamic, pituitary, adrenal cortical axis. So multiple factors regulate aldosterone synthesis. Major factors are elevated blood potassium ion concentration. So too much potassium in your blood, or decrease in your blood pH, then we can raise the pH via the kidneys, where we just talked about, or the angiotensin II, that's in that whole, right here in the middle, the renin angiotensin aldosterone system, which increases your blood pressure. All right, so increased angiotensin II will help increase your aldosterone, which will increase your blood pressure. So the HPA axis, this hypothalamic pituitary adrenal cortical axis, corticosteroid releasing hormone from the hypothalamus stimulates the release of ACTH from the anterior pituitary. So you have the CRH from the hypothalamus, the ACTH from the anterior pituitary stimulates production and release of aldosterone from your adrenal cortex, right? So just like we talked about before, multi-tiered response, the hypothalamus controlling the pituitary then controls the adrenal cortex in this case. Same thing happens in the thyroid. Hypothalamus controls the pituitary then sends a signal to the thyroid glands, as we saw before. You can have disorders, obviously, with your aldosterone levels, just like you can with pretty much any hormone levels. Hypersecretion can lead to low potassium ion levels, or high blood sodium levels, or even high blood pressure. Some other hormones of the adrenal cortex, glucocorticoids, and the most potent one is cortisol. This is cortisol is kind of known as your stress hormone, and the main role of these glucocorticoids is to help your body respond to stress. When you have stress, when you have stress in your body, and people call stress the silent killer. When you have stress in your body releases cortisol from. This is a hormone that is released from your adrenal cortex, right? But if you're constantly releasing cortisol, that is not considered a good thing, right? It is not good if you're consistently stressed out, so to speak. All right, so stress response. Stress response events that maintain homeostasis when body is faced with the stressor. So your body's stressed, and you release this cortisol, and what happens? Stimulates your liver to synthesize enzymes for gluconeogenesis. So you make more glucose. Glucose is used by your body as energy, right? So you break down muscle, break down those amino acids and make glucose. Break down fat and make glucose, which sounds kind of good. Also, it also decreases certain levels of leukocytes, which is not good, especially in a time such as, the time I'm making this video. We have this coronavirus, which is terrorizing America right now. And so when you are under stress, your body has decreased level of leukocytes. Leukocytes help your body fight off pathogens. Leukocytes, white blood cells. So when you are stressed, when you're stressed, over and over, it suppresses your immune system. So that's why people who are consistently stressed out have a higher tendency to get sick. All right, so this is what happens when we're stressed. Our bodies make more glucose. We can break down muscle. We can break down fat, make more glucose, make more energy. Right? The stimulus can be, I'm waking up in the morning, I'm getting going. The stimulus could be stress. Professor is about to, give me a hard test, and I'm stressed out. The stimulus could be the sympathetic nervous system, your fight or flight. Causes hypothalamus secrete CRH, the anterior pituitary decrease ACTH, adrenal cortex makes cortisol. We make more glucose and inhibit our inflammatory response, inhibit our leukocytes. All right, so that's the pathway. Of course, if we have excess cortisol, we can break down more muscles than we should be breaking down. It's called muscle wasting. We can have too much glucose in our blood, hyperglycemia. You could have what we call hypertension, high blood pressure. You're stressed out, high blood pressure. I talked about constantly having your leukocytes suppressed, immunosuppression. So that will suppress your immune system, which is obviously not good. Right, so these are all things that could happen from basically too much stress and too much cortisol being released into your body. All right, this is somebody who has issues with their cortisol. And you also have hyposecretion, too little secretions. Hyper, too much; hypo is too little. And that could also cause some problems with your fluid, electrolyte, and acid-base homeostasis. Okay. Now, hormones of the adrenal medulla. Remember, the adrenal cortex is towards the superior, the outside, or the superficial, whereas the adrenal medulla is the deeper portion of the adrenal gland. Okay, so we have from the adrenal medulla, what's created, which is most important, is the epinephrine, otherwise known as catecholamine. And that also is a response to stress. Increase your rate and force of your heart contractions, right? So I'm stressed out, I'm fight or flight. I need more blood. My heart beats faster. My heart beats stronger as well. I need more oxygen because I'm working. Constrict the blood vessels, supplying your skin, digestive organs, and urinary organs. Remember that from parasympathetic and sympathetic. So sympathetic, this is going to be mostly very similar to your sympathetic response, right? Your fight or flight response. Dilate your blood vessels to your muscles, so more blood going to your muscles, less blood going to your digestive organs, urinary, and your skin. We want to dilate the pupils. And so this this gives an added benefit to when we are in fight or flight mode. So when we are in fight or flight mode, our sympathetic nervous system is triggering the fight or flight mode, the increased heart rate, the increased heart pump, but also the epinephrine, this hormone, when it's released into our bloodstream, helps trigger places in our body that maybe the nervous system didn't trigger. So it helps more of our body get into that fight or flight mode. That's why they'll say, somebody will say, I'm an adrenaline junkie or something like that. They'll say those kinds of things. It's this epinephrine which helps us get into that, keep us in that fight or flight mode. Okay. At the end, you see overall result is coordinated, integrated response between endocrine and nervous system, increases chances for survival in face of a stressor, right? So when you're in that fight or flight mode, you not only have your sympathetic nervous system, but you also have your endocrine system releasing epinephrine, which does sort of the same things as your sympathetic nervous system. All right, and that's a chart putting that together. And that is the end of this section.